Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven speaking to you from south of Jerusalem, here in the land of Israel. Today is the 26th day of the month of ER 5783. It's May 16th, 2023. Let's just give you an update on the Omer, Sfirat Omer. Today is 41 days, which are 5 weeks and 6 days of the Omer. Just over 1 week left of Sfirat Omer, of the counting of the Omer, which of course leads to the holiday of Shavuot, which is actually next Thursday evening, Friday, which runs right into Shabbat. So it's really a 2-day holiday weekend. This coming Shabbat, we're beginning the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. It's called in Hebrew, Bamidbar, which literally means in the wilderness. And the first parasha, the first reading of it, is also called Bamidbar, and it begins with Numbers 1:1, concludes with Numbers chapter 4, verse 20. This Shabbat is also Shabbat Mevarchin, meaning it's the Shabbat that we will be mentioning the upcoming new moon. And the upcoming new moon, I'm just going to check this out. Because I'm not fully prepared here. I don't have it right in front of me, but the upcoming new moon is, I believe, Motzash. Is that correct? Yeah. The upcoming new moon will be beginning Saturday evening. As soon as Shabbat goes out, it will be the new month of Sivan. Sivan, of course, is the month of the receiving of the Torah, the third month after Israel left Egypt. And it was on the 6th day of Sivan that we received the Torah, and we receive it every year anew on the 6th day, because that's Shavuot, the anniversary of the receiving of Torah at Mount Sinai. And this Wednesday, tomorrow evening, is Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, the anniversary, 56th anniversary of the liberation and reunification of the holy city of Jerusalem, the once and forever, the eternal capital of Israel. And of course, with that liberation and unification, also central to that was the liberation of the Temple Mount, returning to Jewish hands for the first time in nearly 1,900 years. Now, the actual Hebrew date, which corresponds with June 6, 1967, which is the Gregorian calendar date of the reunification of Jerusalem, is the 28th of ER, and that actually begins Thursday evening. But if I'm not mistaken, and I apologize for being uncertain about this, but sometimes it's just really hard to nail something down. I believe that they're makdim, that when we have a holiday like Yom Yerushalayim, which is a secular holiday in that we don't have any prohibitions, we can work, we can use electricity, etc., etc. We always, if it's going to fall on a Thursday, Friday, it is advanced to the day before so that celebrations won't run into Shabbat, and there won't be a fear of desecrating the Shabbat unintentionally by people who are still celebrating. So Yom Yerushalayim, which is really 28th of ER, is going to be moved forward, and it will begin tomorrow evening. And if you've been following the news, you know that Israel just concluded another round of missile and anti-missile warfare with Gaza, the terrorist groups in Gaza. And again, I think it lasted 4 or 5 days. Many hundreds of missiles were sent to Israel. Almost all that were heading toward populated areas were were taken down by the Israeli missile defense, Iron Dome. And unfortunately, there was one malfunction, actually, of the Iron Dome, and one missile got through and killed an elderly Israeli in Rehovot, the city of Rehovot. And another casualty was actually a Gazan worker. Yes, an Arab from Gaza who had a work permit to work in Israel, and his brethren in Gaza fired a missile that killed him. And Israel, of course, opened up this round of... I didn't open up the round of aggression. The Islamic Jihad organization had been firing hundreds of missiles into Israel the previous week, and Israel retaliated by taking out its top leadership in simultaneous strikes last week, and that, of course, earned us the retaliation of hundreds of missiles. And as these things have been going for the past 18 years, ever since Israel left Gaza, a move that every sane person in Israel now regrets, because this is a recurring situation that most everyone agrees that it's going to continue to reoccur unless and until Israel actually sends in troops and retakes Gaza, retakes control. But it's also agreed that to do so would be a very bloody war, and many casualties on the Israeli side, many casualties on the Palestinian side. And currently, we're a democratic society here, and currently the general population doesn't have the stomach for that, to be honest, and the government doesn't have the political capital to make that move. And of course, that's all internal, domestic, but certainly in the international front, because it is a front, Israel, I'm sure, would be castigated left, right, and center, up, down, you know what, for doing such a thing. So it's not something that's going to happen soon, but many people feel that it's inevitable, that this is a situation that is intolerable, and these almost annual little flare-ups like we had this past week are inevitable. The Israeli army refers to it as cutting the grass, mowing the yard. That is, we see they're building up their capabilities, they're getting bolder, we strike, we knock out a lot of their capabilities, we knock out their leadership, and then we know in another year we're going to have to do it again. That seems to be the strategy. Is it the best strategy? I don't know if anybody would agree that it's the best strategy. Is it the viable strategy for the moment? Obviously, there are people who feel that that is the case. But until the Palestinians realize that Israel's here to stay, that the land is the land of Israel, belongs to the nation of Israel, that there never was a nation called Palestine, and their war against the Jewish state, their war whose intention is to annihilate the Jewish state, is not going to succeed. And the sooner they realize that, the sooner there'll be peace, and the sooner they will prosper. But until that happens, what we saw this past week will inevitably happen again and again, and Hamas, true to its recent tradition, has already been spewing forth threats that if Israel goes ahead with its planned flag march every Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, for many, many years, much Zionist youth gather in Jerusalem, and there's a march with many, many, many Israeli flags, and they march through the old city to the Western Wall, to the Kotel. And in recent years, there have been scuffles with the local Arabs who attacked them violently, etc., etc. And it was 2 years ago that Hamas fired some missiles into Jerusalem, and so they're threatening to do such a thing again. They're also calling on all the local Muslims to go to the Temple Mount on the Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, in order to create havoc. And of course, our own Temple Mount activists are calling on the public to come to the Temple Mount to celebrate, to honor, to mark, to commemorate Yom Yerushalayim. And so hopefully thousands of Jews will be in the Temple Mount, and we'll see what happens. But we can't submit to threats, and Israel certainly, if fired at, will fire back. And who knows, there were even hints that maybe Israel will preempt any planned Hamas attack and strike first, which always seems to be the most successful strategy. And in fact, that was the strategy of the Six-Day War, and that's how Israel won the Six-Day War, because Israel, being threatened by the Egyptian army, which had illegally entered into the Sinai Peninsula, 100,000 soldiers, and were heading toward Israel, and had signed a military agreement with Syria and Jordan, and they were all getting ready to attack, and Israel preempted all that with our own attack on the Egyptian Air Force, and demolished completely the Egyptian Air Force. The entire fleet of planes were on the ground at the time, and Israel destroyed them, thus really rendering their entire army vulnerable. And the Egyptians couldn't admit it, so the war went on for 6 days, but it was really won in those first few hours, and that was a surprise attack. And again, Israel was always castigated for attacking, and do we want to be the aggressors? Are we seen as the aggressor if we surprise attack? There it was pretty clear what the Arab states had in mind. But in 1973, just 6 years later, when Israel also saw what was going on, Israel chose not to preempt what was going to be an attack on Israel, and by holding back, Israel suffered tremendous losses. So, you can, it's always a balancing act for Israel, because the fact of the matter is that the diplomatic battlefield is also crucial, almost as crucial as the actual military battlefield. We know that. So Israel always has to take all these things into consideration, which usually means that we can't satisfy everyone, sometimes no one, but so that's the reality. So Yom Yerushalayim, Wednesday evening, much celebration, and the march will take place on Thursday. God willing, it will be peaceful. God willing, thousands and thousands of Jews will be on the Temple Mount. We've reported on a few different occasions this week on our Facebook page that this past week, the president of Kenya paid an official visit to Israel, and one of his top advisors, Reverend Dennis Tumbi, ascended the Temple Mount. He was a guest of Yehuda Glick, as you know, is a veteran Temple Mount activist, and Reverend Natumbi was on the Temple Mount, and he spoke very eloquently about his love for Israel, and Kenya's love for Israel, and the importance of the Temple Mount. That was a short video clip that we posted on Facebook this past week, and he also wrote an article, or was interviewed for an article, which we posted today, in which he says, as a Christian, I cannot reconcile with the fact that I cannot exercise my faith wherever I want to. God is omnipresent and omnipotent, and it is not right that when I'm in a Temple Mount, I must, quote, behave myself. I want to spend the whole day there, but I was only given 10 minutes. I felt spirituality up there, removed my shoes and walked barefoot in the presence of God, but I could not pray loudly, could not prostrate myself. I wanted to kneel, to shout to God, to dance, and those rights were taken away from me. It is a human rights violation, and the government of Israel and the entire global community should combat this. Christians and Jews should not be considered second-class citizens on the Temple Mount. If they can't access it, no one should. I couldn't agree more with the Reverend, and I appreciate his very bold and honest and forthright words. And we need more of that. We need more of that from our own politicians. Enough of this pussyfooting around. We're so afraid we're going to start a conflagration. We're going to hurt feelings. We have to stand up for ourselves. And if standing up for ourselves means the right to be able to bow down and to prostrate ourselves on the Temple Mount, that's what we have to do. So, kol hakavod, as we say in Israel. Kudos to the Reverend Dennis Tumbi for his very, very, very honest and heartfelt statement. We appreciate it. Before we go on to our discussion about the Parashat Bamidbar, I want to mention two things. First of all, yes, Yom Yerushalayim, and that means that we have a lot of nice content that we've been posting. A Temple Mount Moment, I'd like to say, award-winning series. I don't think it's won any awards, actually, but it's very popular. A Temple Mount Moment. This week, the subject is the Six-Day War and what took place on the Temple Mount. A very, very beautiful, very informative video, which we posted on Sunday. It's already received on YouTube 2,618 views. And we began yesterday posting segments from an interview that we at the Temple Institute conducted with Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, the founder of the Temple Institute, in 2009. And many of you have may seen a short, I think 5-minute edited edition of this that we posted at the time. And it's very beautiful. And I was recently looking at the original unedited interview, which lasts nearly an hour. And I just found it so beautiful, so compelling, inspiring, and informative that I felt that this really has to be shared. Rabbi Ariel now is in his 80s, and he was there. He was one of the paratroopers who liberated the Temple Mount, and he recalls the build-up to the Six-Day War, the feeling going on in Israel, the fear, the trepidation, and the anticipation as civilians and as a soldier, and of course describes his own experiences as a soldier. And I just find it to be fascinating. There's so many facets to it, and it's such important history. And I think it's important that people know this history. And I think it's a gift that we have his recollections. And so I have been taking the unedited interview and breaking it down into small 3, 4, 5-minute sections that we're posting. We're going to be posting every few days for the next few weeks, I imagine, because I think that's how long it'll take before we've completed. But I encourage people to listen because I think it's really important that you hear what he has to say. we who love Israel, 56 years later, we love the Six-Day War. We love what happened. We see it as a miracle. But we don't tend to think about what was really going on in people's minds and all the details of that miracle. I mean, and when you do hear Rabbi Ariel's memories, recollections, I think the miraculous nature of the Six-Day War, the feeling, the knowledge that God was there. And then, as we say, HaShem will fight for us. It's right there. You feel it, even though the rabbi is simply recalling very matter-of-factly what he was going through, but you feel it. So I really, really encourage people to listen to it. And as I said, each segment is pretty much bite-size, meaning that 3 or 4 minutes, and one ends and the other one picks up where the next part picks up where the previous part ended. So you listen to the entire thing, you hear the entire story, and it's very fascinating and very informative and very compelling. So those are some of the things that we've been posting this week, leading up to Jerusalem Day. And let's now talk about Bamidbar. Let's read those first few verses from the book of Numbers. And of course, we know that it's called Numbers in English because it begins with a census. And there's a few censuses in the book of Numbers, so that's Numbers. But the traditional Jewish way of naming our books, the 5 books, is by the first word or the first significant word of the first verse in each of the 5 books, and that's the same way that we name each of the parshot, each of the different sections that we read each week. So this is the book of Bamidbar, and it's also Parshat Bamidbar. And Bamidbar, as I said, means wilderness. Let's read those first few verses in Hebrew and then in English. Vayedaber HaShem el Moshe Bamidbar Sinai, ba'ol moed, ba'echad lachodesh hasheni, b'shana hashenit, letzeitam me'eretz Mitzrayim, lemar, su'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemishpachotam, leveit avotam, b'mispar shemot kol zachar legugulotam, miben 20 shana v'mala, kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael tifkadu otam, tziv'otam ata v'aharon. HaShem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, on the 1st of the 2nd month, in the 2nd year after their exodus from the land of Egypt, saying, Take a census of the entire assembly of the children of Israel, according to their families, according to their fathers' households, by number of the names, every male according to their head count, from 20 years of age and up, everyone who goes out to the legion in Israel. You shall count them according to everyone... you shall count them according to their legions, you and Aaron, and with you shall be one man from each tribe, a man who is the leader of his father's household. So this census, the counting of the males from 20 years of up, is for the purpose of forming an army. So here we are, the 2nd year out of Egypt. And we know that on the first day of the first month of the 2nd year, which was the 1st of Nisan, was the day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, which we first started to read about all the way back at the conclusion of the book of Exodus, and which we read about in the book of Leviticus. And so we're 1 month later now. 1 month later. The 2nd month is, of course, the month of Iyar. That's the month that we are in now. We're in the 26th of Iyar. And this... takes place on the 1st day of Iyar in that 2nd year. So, as I have said before, Israel's preparing to go into the land, right? Israel left Egypt, received the Torah, and built the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and now in this book of Bamidbar, in this Parshat Bamidbar, in these opening chapters, we have a census, and we learn about the formation of the tribal encampments, how they are arrayed around the tabernacle. We learn the exact order, which encampment, which tribe is next to which tribe, and which direction they're facing in, because it's like a square around the tabernacle. And the 12 tribes, excluding the tribe of Levi, are around that perimeter. And the tribe of Levi, which was not included in this census because they do not go out to war, because their official job is to tend to and guard over the tabernacle. So their encampment, which they are broken up into the families of the three sons of Levi. Right, Levi, of course, was one of the sons of Yaakov, Israel, and the three encampments of Levi are the family of I want to get this right, of Kahat, Amram, and wait a minute, Kahat, Yitzhar, and Uziel. I'm going to get this right. I don't think that's right. I want to get this right. I have to apologize because I had a very, very busy day and I didn't prepare everything as I would like to. But these are the sons of Levi by their names. I'm reading now verse 17, chapter 3, Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. So those are the three sons of Levi, and their families are the three families that tend to the tabernacle. And as we begin to learn here in Parshat Bamidbar, each of those three families have different jobs to do in the tabernacle. And of course, a great part of the responsibility of the Levites in the wilderness was traveling with the tabernacle, which meant when it was time to travel, they needed to disassemble the tabernacle and pack it up. They needed to take all the sacred vessels and cover them up and carry them to the next place where Israel would encamp. And that was a huge responsibility, which of course they didn't have once Israel was in the land, and the tabernacle, later the Mikdash, the temple, were in fixed locations. But Israel is organizing itself now around the tabernacle in order to be able to march into Canaan and take the land, inherit the land, conquer it. And of course, at the heart of the encampment, the heart of the nation, the heart and soul of the nation, is the tabernacle. God's encampment, God's dwelling place, the tent where HaShem's presence is. And the inner perimeter are the Levites, and the outer perimeter are the 12 tribes. And again, we've been posting about that, and so if you want to check out our Facebook page, you can see the exact layout of the encampments, who's next to who's facing which direction. And significantly, I believe, the three encampments who are led by Yehudah, the tribe of Yehudah, Yehudah, Yisachar, and Zvulun, are on the eastern flank of the Israelite encampment. And the three tribes led by the tribe of Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, are on the northern side. And I believe that these were the largest armies, combined armies, and those were the two fronts that were, Israel was moving in order to get into the land of Canaan, moving in a northeastern direction. So I believe that that's why those encampments were in that direction, because that would give Israel its strongest vanguard, when pursuing the land. So one of the fascinating things about all this, what's happening here, is this. Let's go to chapter 2, verse 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, the children of Israel shall encamp, each man by his banner, degel in Hebrew, banner, flag, according to the insignias of their fathers' households. At a distance surrounding the tent of meeting shall they encamp. So we learn here that each tribe has a flag, a banner, and each banner has an insignia. Each banner has some symbol on it that somehow describes, symbolizes their tribal affiliation. This is something we've never heard of before. And so our sages were fascinated by this and explored what's it all about. And there are many, many, many wonderful midrashim discussing this, and you can look them up online. There's many in English and many, of course, in Hebrew. And since I mentioned that right now, I just want to go back. Yes, Rabbi Ariel's interview is in Hebrew, and I'm translating it into English, trying to keep as close to his words and the feeling he's trying to convey as I can, and hopefully that is successful. But back to what we were talking about. Beautiful midrashim, and one midrash tells us that when at Mount Sinai, when Hashem's presence descended onto the top of the mount in order to hand over to Israel the Torah, beginning with the Ten Commandments, and we know that there was lightning and thunder and the sounds of the shofar, and that there were thick clouds and there was fire and smoke, etc., etc. The heavens opened up, and Israel saw 220,000 angels, attending angels that accompanied Hashem's presence, and each of those angels were holding a banner. And this was a banner that was signifying their devotion, their love to Hashem. And Israel said, whoa, we want those too. This is Midrash. We also want to show our love for Hashem. And so Hashem said, I'll be Midrash, according to the Midrash, absolutely, if that's what you want, do it. So make yourself banners. And so that's what Israel did. And so we also know that each of these banners, as we're told, had colors and had some kind of image on it, or abstract, I don't know, that symbolized their tribe. So we're told in another midrash that those flags, the colors of those flags, each corresponded to the colors of the stones of those same tribes that were on the Hoshen, on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. So the Midrash tells us what those colors were, and then we can match up those colors with the type of stone that would have that same color. Why am I saying this? This is a bit of an aside, but when over the centuries different names are used for different stones, and so when the Temple Institute was doing the research to find the proper stones for each of the tribes, this midrash was exceedingly helpful. We're at the end of our show. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk.